All right. So as I already mentioned, today we are talking about creating a standout English resume and CV. So I'm going to first start by introducing myself. Hopefully you already know my name is Kathleen. I live in the United States. It seems like we have a very Japan-focused audience today, which is great. Um, but I'm in the United States currently. I live in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado with my dog Mika and my husband. And I would call myself an outdoor enthusiast as I love to spend my summers rafting on the river. But before we get started about the masterclass and the questions, I would like to know more about you. This masterclass is going to be interactive. I am going to ask you questions, and I would really appreciate if you would type your answers in the chat. This would give me a better understanding of your situation and allow me to give you the best possible advice. So I'm going to have 3 questions for you. So the first one is, are you currently applying to jobs, or do you want to look for an English-speaking job in the near future? So that's the first question. The second question is, if yes, if you are currently applying for jobs, how long have you been looking for a new job? And then finally, what do you think is the most challenging part to writing an English resume? So please feel free to share your answers in the chat. I know it might take a moment for you to do that, so I will wait. As I mentioned, I really encourage you to share your answers. It's okay, this is a safe space. So please feel free to be honest and share your opinions. So I look forward to seeing your answers to these questions. So once again, the first one, are you currently applying for a job, or do you want to look for an English-speaking job in the near future? Number 2, if you are currently applying to jobs, how long have you been looking for a new job? And then finally, what do you think is the most challenging part about writing an English resume? I would love to know your answers. And then we can go ahead and get started talking about the questions for today. So I will just give you a couple of moments to write down your answers. All right. So Hidehiko-san said yes. He has been applying for new jobs and has been doing so for a few years. He feels like the headline, the summary, and the overall structure to write in the resume is the most challenging part of an English resume. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, those things can absolutely be a challenge. Hopefully, we will talk about some of those aspects today. If I don't directly answer any of your questions, I will save some time at the end of our session to allow you to ask questions. So if you think of any questions throughout this next hour, please write them down so that you can ask them at the end. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone else feel like sharing? I'll give another moment to let you answer. So are you currently applying to a job? How long have you been doing that? And what do you feel like is the most challenging part? I always like to reassure my clients that writing resumes is challenging for even non-native English speakers because it's not typical English writing. We use a very specific set of standards, and that is why it can be so challenging for people, myself included sometimes. All right, so I'm gonna keep going. Please feel free if you're currently typing to continue submitting your answers. Don't backspace or delete. I don't want you to not share. Please share. Runobu said, I've just started my new role this week, a couple of months. Nice, good job. That's great. Sanichi says, not currently applying, but may be in the near future. Okay, well, I hope this will be helpful for you in the near future. Thank you both for sharing your answers with me. All right, so about Go Global English. Go Global English is my company, and it started off all with teaching English as a second language. Before I even graduated university, I fell in love with teaching English as a second language because I actually started off as a volunteer. And even though I didn't have my first degree, I was teaching to a room filled with adults from all over the world. And it was very exciting because they had such a strong motivation to learn. However, I felt like I didn't have the necessary resources to be able to help these people, some who had their masters or even PhDs back in their home countries. So, because of this, right, the people that I was helping did not feel confident to apply to global companies, despite their advanced degrees and extensive work experience. Fast forward a few years, I graduated university, and then I decided to go and receive my master's in teaching English as a second language from Colorado State University. I have taught both at universities, both in China as well as Japan, and in the United States as well. I actually taught in Osaka, so not too far from Kyoto or Tokyo. After those two experiences, I went back to my home in the mountains of Colorado. And I was feeling frustrated because I had all of this experience. I had an advanced degree. I had taught in different countries, but I felt like I wasn't helping people in the most effective way possible. Living in the mountains of Colorado means that I was living in a rural area and I needed multiple jobs. And I felt like I could be helping people so much more. So that is when I decided to start my own business in January 2020 with the purpose to help ambitious business professionals to not only improve their business English communication, but also their interview and resume writing skills so that they can feel more confident and advance their careers. And that is why I am here today talking with all of you. So in today's masterclass, I will be answering these three questions. The first one is, what's the most important part of a resume? The second is, how long should a resume be? And then finally, should you write a different resume for every job you apply to? and why? So let's start with the first question. And that is, what do you think is the most important part of your resume? So take some time in the chat. I'm going to go back and read the previous answers. I see some people replied to my very first set of questions that I asked, but please take some time right now. What do you think is the most important part of your resume? I always like to say any guess is a good guess, right? Even if it might not be 100% right, that's okay. We always learn best when we get something wrong. But I really want to know, what do you think is the most important part of your resume? All right, I'm going to go back and read some of these answers while you're typing. Shiho said, yes, they are currently applying to jobs, and they've been doing so for a couple of months. And they said, it is not only a matter of English resume. Under consideration on how to focus on further possibility to realize the ideal job. All right, yes, that can absolutely be a challenge. Someone else said, yes, they have started applying to jobs from now, and they feel like the most challenging part is to change my career from the IT industry to the accounting consulting field. Yeah, changing careers can be a challenge, but it's all about how you sell yourself. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that today. All right, the most important part of your resume, I see some answers coming in. So Shiho said the introduction. I see expertise, the career summary. These are all really great guesses. Might be a picture if you put up front. Okay, yeah, these all can be important depending on the jobs you're applying for. But I still haven't seen the most important thing yet. But I love these guesses. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. So the most important part of your resume is not, I thought I should start there. It's not the length of your resume or how many pages your resume should be. I know we will talk about this a little bit later, and that is because it is one of the most common questions that I'm asked. So I do think it's important to talk about. However, it's not the most important part of your resume. The most important part of your resume is not the formatting or how your resume looks or how it's structured. And then finally, the most important part of your resume is not what companies you used to work for. I have a lot of people come to me concerned that they haven't worked for Google or Amazon, and that's okay. Most people don't. So you don't need to worry about these things. They all are important and should be taken into consideration, the length and how you format your resume, but they're not the most important part. The most important part of your resume is highlighting your successes and accomplishments in your previous positions. So you must highlight what you achieved, what you accomplished in your current job or any of your previous jobs. The reason why is if you can't show the company you're applying to what you can achieve, then they will never be able to know what you will be able to accomplish for them. I want you to sit and think about that for a second, because that's a very important point. If the company you're applying to cannot see that you have been able to achieve something or accomplish something, then they won't know what you can achieve for them. So one thing I recommend is to not just list your daily tasks or what you did at your previous job or what you do at your current job, right? Because that's not sharing your successes. That's just telling me what you do. And there is a difference. So let's imagine that you are a project manager and one bullet point on your resume could be managed multiple teams simultaneously. That is telling me a task, what you did. It's not telling me what you accomplished. Instead, you could say something like this: managed the highly successful lean training project for 3 years, improved quality by 32%, cut lead times 21%, cut costs 48%. Do you see the difference between the two? Which statement do you think is more powerful or more impactful? The first one or the second one? Type it in the chat. What do you think is more impactful for a hiring manager? Which one, number one or number two, do you think would show your successes? Hidehiko-san said the second. Yes, the second. Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. Thanks for responding. The one that shows achievements with numerical data, or simply put, numbers, right? Numbers, we have 32%, 21%, 48%. Using numbers in your bullet points is an easy way to show your accomplishments, right? So you need to quantify what you have been able to accomplish. All right, I hope that that was clear. If you have any questions, please make sure you are writing them down, as I will be able to answer them at the end for you. Right, so we need to write strong bullet points under each of our job experiences that show our successes. I want to introduce you to someone. Her name is Matilli. She was one of my previous clients. She had been out of work for over 3 years. She moved from India to the United States with her husband and hadn't worked in that amount of time. She thought that in order to get a new job in the US, that she needed to improve her business English communication skills. However, we focused together on how to turn that employment gap into a learning experience. And while working together, she was able to not only land a new job, but we were also able to focus on negotiating her salary and her benefits. And because of that, she was able to get a job that she wanted. And we were able to do that by focusing on her successes. Even though she had a large employment gap, we were able to turn that time into successes on her resume. All right. So we've already finished the first question. I can't believe it. But now let's move on to the next one of the most popular ones. And that is, how many pages should a resume be? So in your opinion, what do you think? Should it be 1, 2, 3, 10 pages? In the chat, I would love to know your answer. All right. How many pages should a resume be? Shiho says 2 pages. I like it. Any other guesses? Any other guesses? Within 3 pages? Okay. Less than 3 pages? Any other guesses out there? How many pages should a resume be? As I said before, any guess is a good guess. Hidehiko-san said no more than 2 pages. Okay, let's take a look. So the length of your resume is directly correlated to how long you've been a professional in your industry or how long you have been a professional in general, right? If you are trying to change industries, that sentence does not apply to you. However, it still depends on how long you have been a professional. So if you worked in your industry for less than 5 years, then ideally you want your resume to be 1 page long. However, if you've worked in your industry for longer than 5 years, then 2 to 3 pages is okay, depending on the position. And I say depending on the position because if you're applying to an executive level, 3 pages is going to be more common. The more challenging the position, oftentimes the more information you need to share about yourself, the more successes you need to highlight, right? So if you're not applying to an executive position, maybe 2 pages will be more ideal for you. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a straight answer either way because it really depends. I know that's not what you might want to hear, but that's the truth. One thing that I do notice is that you do want to use all of the pages. So if you have 1 page, it needs to be a full page. If you have 2 pages, it needs to be completely full. Let me show you an example. So this is one of the first drafts of a resume from a client of mine. As you can see, they have a 1-page resume, but there is a large amount of white space at the bottom here. That all needs to be filled in with information. It doesn't look great when you have blank space on the bottom of your resume. It is important to have white space. Like this is white space, here is white space. Because if there's too much text, then it becomes overwhelming. There is a balance. However, you need to have a complete page. As I mentioned before, this applies to 1, 2, or even 3-page resumes. However, as I mentioned before, right, the most important part of your resume is highlighting your successes. So the length of your resume really doesn't matter unless you're able to highlight them. One thing you also want to consider, right, is the job you're applying to, the company that you're applying to. If you're applying to a job at Google, you have to consider that they receive hundreds and hundreds of applications. This typically means an industry average for hiring managers is about 8 seconds. So you really need to be able to catch their attention, and you want to make sure that you have an appropriate resume length so that they can look over your resume efficiently. All right. And I want to introduce you to another one of my clients. One of my first clients, actually, Yoshimasa-san, he had worked and succeeded at multiple well-known companies. He was a previous director, which made him a highly qualified candidate. However, he was not nailing the job interview. So he had to learn how to sell himself in the interview and on the resume. When I'm talking about highlighting your successes, that is what I mean by selling yourself, right? You want the company to hire you, or you can think of it a different way as you want the company to buy you, right? So your resume is a way for you to sell yourself and your experiences and your knowledge. While we worked together in my English job transformation program, he was able to land a new job as a regional VP and senior director at a global company because he was able to sell himself on his resume and in his interviews. All right. So we have finally made it to the last question. And before I give you an answer, I want to know what you think. When applying to jobs in the past, did you write different resumes for every job you applied to? Why or why not? So it will be a yes or no answer, most likely. And then tell me why you did that or why you didn't. There are no wrong answers here. No wrong answers. So I would love to hear your experience. And while you're typing, I'm going to take a sip of water. Shiho said, yes, they did write different resumes for every job. Why? I would love to know your reasoning if you want to share. Hidehiko said no, because no idea to write different ones. Good, thank you for sharing. That's okay. We're being honest here, right? Anybody else? Anyone else want to share? When applying to jobs in the past, did you write different resumes for every job you applied to? Why or why not? I'll give you one more minute to answer. As I mentioned before, there's no wrong answers here. Please feel free to just share your experience. Okay, I'm going to keep going. If you're typing still, please still submit your answer. I'm very curious to see what your opinion is and what your experience was, I mean. So the last and final question, should you create a resume for every job you apply to and why? So the simple answer is yes. I have a feeling maybe you might like me a little bit less after hearing that answer, but you should write a slightly different resume for every job you apply to. And you might be thinking to yourself, Kathleen, why? Why should I write a different resume? Why should I create more work for myself by writing different resumes? Because writing resumes is a lot of work. I know that. It is almost like having a job to find a job, right? On top of your real job. It's a lot of work, and writing different resumes is even more work. So why should you do this? And I think it would be best if I gave you an example. So let's imagine that you have 3 best friends. First of all, congrats on having such great friends. Yes, typically, right, best friends have similar likes and similar interests. But at the end of the day, they're different people. And let's imagine that you're the type of person who gets their friends birthday gifts. And let's also say that you get each best friend the exact same birthday gift. How do you think that would make them feel? Probably not great, unless it was for a shared experience. But most likely they might be a little disappointed, which is understandable because they're different people. They would think you would take into consideration their different interests and likes, right? So they would expect maybe that you would get them something different. So now that you've heard this example, let's think back to the different companies you're applying for. Maybe you're applying to similar positions at each different company. However, each position is still going to have slightly different requirements and expectations of you. Also, each company has a different mission and vision. What this means is that you need to take into account these differences on your different resumes. That is why it's important to write different resumes for each position that you apply to, because you need to take in these differences. You need to show each company you're applying to that you took their specific company into consideration. And you chose to highlight the skills that they are looking for, right? So I hope that gives you a good example of why you need to use a different resume. This does not mean you need to write a completely different resume for each job. It just might mean slight differences. Maybe you need to focus on certain projects that you worked on for one company and different projects for another company because they have different requirements. So maybe you don't need to change your objective statement fully. Maybe just some small phrases need to be replaced to highlight the values of the specific company you're applying to. I want to look at some of the other answers that you wrote before. So someone said no, because I belong to IT industry since they were newly graduated. Shiho said that they wrote different resumes because it should be tailor-made for each company, as I would like to receive a letter exclusively written for me. Yes, I love that answer, Shiho. We're on the same page. And Terunobu said no, since I have 20 years experience. Okay, thank you for sharing your answers. And I want to introduce you to one more of my clients, and her name is Jessica. So Jessica had recently moved to Germany from Brazil with her husband, who got a job, and she needed to find a new job using English. She had worked in data analytics for over 6 years, as well as being a manager, which allowed her to be a highly qualified candidate. And within 5 sessions together, she was able to not only land a new job, but also change her career path because she was able to tailor her resume and her interview answers to each job, each company she was applying for. I hope you've noticed that I said resume and interview because these are both two different tools to sell yourself, right? So you need to not only tailor your resume, but also your interview answers for each company that you apply to. All right. So that being said, I wanted to kind of give you one last takeaway, and that is the application process is not about you. And that might be a little bit confusing or counterintuitive because you're applying to a job. You are having an interview with the company, right? The interview is with you. But remember, the point of the interview is for the company to find the best possible candidate to fill the open position. So you need to be strategic and make it so that you are that person if you want to be, right? We don't want to be involved with all companies, right? The application process is a two-way street, right? You need to learn more about the company that you're applying to, and they need to learn about you. But ultimately, the purpose of the interview, the purpose of you writing a resume is so that they can find the best person. So that is what the application process is about. It's about the company finding the best person to fit that role. And so your job in creating a resume and in your interviews is showing them that you are that best person to fill that role. All right. So the last thing that I wanted to share with you all today is I wanted to introduce you to my English job transformation program. So I mentioned this before, right? When I was working with Yoshimasa-san, Jessica Matilli. It's a 10-session intensive program with one-on-one coaching. Not only would you be coached one-on-one for 1 hour each, so 10 hours of coaching total, you will also receive a lifetime access to 7 instructional videos, which were recorded by me. They last from anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long. And in addition to this, you would have a shared Google folder with me with all of the PowerPoint presentations. In these 10 weeks, we would work together to find a job that matches your background, that allows you to learn about different business cultures, that allows you to make yourself a standout applicant with your resumes. You'll learn what a cover letter is and how to effectively write one, along with 5 classes dedicated to improving your interview skills. Because I know most often that is the scariest part about the application process. We will focus on increasing your confidence throughout the application process in English. That is the most important part to me, is that you feel more confident. And also to develop the ability to sell yourself in order to make yourself a standout candidate, both in your resume and in your interviews, as well as the cover letter, which I just briefly talked about. So that is the English Job Transformation Program. If you feel like you don't need all of those skills or to work on those skills, I also customize programs for each of my clients. So I'm always available to talk about these things. But that is all the information that I have for you today. So does anyone have any questions? You can either type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. It's up to you. So is there any questions about the most important part of your resume, the length of your resume, writing different resumes, or anything else related to the English job application process? Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? While you are typing, if you're typing your questions, if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, I'm going to share my LinkedIn profile link. Please feel free to connect with me or contact me there. You can also contact me through my email address, which I just put in the chat once again. As I mentioned at the beginning, this session was recorded. So if you would like to receive the recording, if you came late, if you would just like to review, please just send me a message on LinkedIn or on my email so that you can receive that recording. And finally, if the English Job Transformation Program sounds interesting to you, or if working with me through a customized program sounds interesting to you, the last link is my calendar. So please feel free to schedule a 30-minute call with me. It's free. We just talk about you, your situation, your goals, and how we can reach your goals together. So those are the 3 things that I've provided in the chat for you. Are there any other questions today? Any other questions? All right, let's see. The example of a GIF was a good example. However, in some cases, it might be very difficult that you cannot change our identity. So, Turonobu, I understand what you're saying. It's not about changing your identity. It's about how you sell yourself, right? It's what you're focusing on. So especially if you're wanting to change industries, what are the related skills that from the IT industry to the accounting industry that you can match or connect? Shiho, If that does, if that's not, if that doesn't make sense, please feel free to ask more questions. But I hope that's a little bit helpful. It's all about how you sell yourself. You're not changing your past experiences. It's about what you're choosing to highlight, what you're choosing to tell the company you're applying to. Shiho says, would you be able to consult applicable industries with your candidates? Uh, I I think I understand your question, Shiho, and the answer is yes. We are able to talk about that together and do research as well together. And one of the most important things about me as a coach is I hope to give you tools and resources to be able to do it on your own. So not only am I helping you along the way, but also I'm trying to teach you and so that you can do it by yourself in the future. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? These are great questions. Yeah, thank you. Oh, let me see. I missed one. Oh, I'm sorry, Hidehiko, I missed yours. When it comes to success, if there is no obvious success, even if you've challenged hard, how to focus on achievement? Any advice? Yeah. So sometimes it is helpful to think about um, numbers, right? We talked about numbers before. So did you do something in a certain amount of time? Was that a short amount of time, an expedited amount of time, right? That is one way to show an accomplishment or success. You have to think out of the box. I don't know if you've heard that expression before, but you have to think creatively, right? What aspect can you turn into a success, right? Was it how you did something, how fast you did something, right? And it's always something that I am willing to talk with you about. So even if you just want to brainstorm together about these successes, because I know it can be challenging sometimes to think about it by yourself, please feel free to just set up a time to talk and I would be willing to help out. Any other questions? Any other questions? Achievement is always important. However, many companies want us to be a team player at the same time. How do we describe it? Very good question. Yeah, so most oftentimes we don't achieve something by ourselves. Sometimes that happens, but most of the time that's not true. So you can say, you led a project through constant communication with your teammates or through critical feedback from your teammates, right? We can still incorporate that. One thing we don't want to do is use we. On your resume, in your interview, you say me and my team. And I know that that might be uncomfortable to kind of take ownership of that accomplishment, but you have to remember that the company is interviewing you, not your whole team. So yes, you do need to acknowledge, right, the fact that you are working with the team, that you are communicating with them, right, that you had this interaction, but you want to make sure that you're at the end of the day, you're highlighting what you did within that team, right? I hope that helps. Please let me know if you need more clarification. Any other questions? These are really good questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for participating. It makes this masterclass so much fun for me. If you have any other questions that you don't want to write in the chat, please send me an email, send me a message on LinkedIn, and we can talk more privately there. I just want to say thank you all for attending this masterclass. I hope that you found it to be valuable. I always enjoy having these. And so I hope to see you at the next one. I'm going to have at least one per month, and I will be sure to send you the recording if you have sent me an email. So I will absolutely do that for you. Enjoy your weekends. I hope to see you all again soon. And thank you. Thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you again. Thank you. I appreciate that, Hidehiko. Enjoy your weekend, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye.